Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Mystery Theory. Today is Wednesday, and I am trying to record this video during the day, or this audio, so if you hear dogs barking, kids coughing, welcome to my life. But I feel a little bit better, and if I lose my voice, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna try to do this soft-spoken as it usually is on Wednesdays, because you guys really have been requesting it a lot. So I don't mind. I actually enjoy doing soft-spoken. And I wanted to do a quick announcement. Today for you, it's going to be February the 20th, if you're watching the day that I released this video on YouTube. So starting this following Sunday, I will have the podcast available every Sunday, and it will have nothing to do with the cases that I cover either on Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays here on the channel. What you have to do, if you don't know how a podcast works, is you download a podcast app if you have an Android, or you can listen to it by looking up The Mystery Theory in your iTunes store. So you just look it up there, and it's going to give you options as music, podcast. If you put The Mystery Theory, you'd be able to follow me there and get a new case on Sundays too. Now, I was doing it Wednesdays, and my schedule kind of changed along with another 100 million things in my life recently. So I decided that if I'm going to commit to do 4 different cases every week, I need to be a little bit ahead of the game and know exactly. And you guys gave me a lot of good ideas in cases, so I think I have enough. And kind of made a schedule for me to set apart time to do research on shorter videos or cases and longer ones when I need maybe a week or more of research, depending on how big is the case or how much information there's out there. So if you want to follow my Sundays podcasts, please make sure that you stop this video and go to your iTunes store or download a podcast app, whatever you like, and look up The Mystery Theory and follow me there. So once I put the new podcast, it will send you a notification, and you'd be able to listen to it without even have to look at the screen or anything like that. It's just will be an audio. So now that I got that out of the way, today's case is about something that, truth be told, I have no idea about. And when I started to read more into the case and find different documentaries and interviews and public court things around this case, I realized how old I feel. I've never done any kind of dating apps or website. I met my husband when I was really young, and we dated, we got married, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So every time I watch a video or see somebody that is talking about swiping left or swiping right or swiping, what's that even mean? I mean, honestly, I had no idea. But if we're honest, dating websites have been around for a really long time, and this case in particular, it's not about a teenager or a young lady or a young man trying to find a date, but it's actually a grown woman that, after a pretty long and sad divorce, after years, she decided to try to find love, and she chose that way. avenue to try to meet new people, which I'm not judging. Whatever makes you happy, you should do it. But we're gonna go through this case because basically this is, online dating from hell. Just a nightmare, completely gone wrong. And I hope that if you are a younger person or somebody, doesn't matter how old you are, but if you are in this kind of website or apps or whatever, this case will help you open your eyes on how to maybe be a little bit safer, okay? I'm not saying to stop, but be safe. Now, this case is about Deborah Houchin, and I always get it wrong. She is 56 years old at the time, but she's not a typical 56-year-old lady. She was always into fitness and health and eating healthy, and she was a runner and overall somebody who had the discipline to do it, because you can do it when you're 56, when you're 60, when you're 70. You can be healthy, you can be fit. But I think that it kind of divides us, the discipline that we have in continue to do those things even after going over 50 or 40, or maybe you're in your 20s and you don't want to exercise. I mean, it's not about the age, but it's about the discipline that it takes to do that. So just so you have a better picture of Deborah. Now, she was described as a warm and loving person in general. She was described by not only by friends, but also by neighbors, that she would go out of her way to try to help somebody in need. She was a social worker after all, and she's been a social worker for the last 25 years. She's been a very successful woman. She has a practice with her best friend, Amy Tinge, and she has a very busy schedule as a marriage counselor. Now, Deborah was also starting over, as I mentioned before. She had a very hard divorce, and it was about 5 years prior, so maybe she was 50 years old when she went through her divorce. But she believes in love and second chances, and she believes in starting over. So she decides to start a profile in different dating sites. According to her friend Amy, she wanted to find true love and companionship. She really wanted to have a family. She wanted to have that sense of, I don't know, she wanted to have that somebody to go back to after work every night. But, and I think this is very true. I think that for a smart, strong, financially independent, successful women, it is sometimes hard to find true love, especially, in maybe around her age. I think it's overall in any age, but a lot of people are a little apprehensive the older that you get. You're strong, you're independent, you're financially independent, you have everything that you need. So she's looking for what she's missing, which is love. And for somebody with that personality and with that amount of success and independence, I should say, it was very hard for her to find somebody compatible with her. And according to Amy, her friend, she decided to overlook the dangers of online dating, trying to be safe as much as she could. But Amy remembers, on the weekends, they would get together So they would kind of make a joke about some creepy guys that Deborah met, maybe Thursday, Friday, they went out, and this kind of guys that you don't know if they're trying to impress you or what it is. But there was some dates where she would go and the guy would be like, you know what, the waitress would come and say, what are you drinking, ma'am? And he'd be like, oh, whatever I'm drinking. Then Deborah would be like, no, I'm having something different, or whatever he was eating. And possessive guys overall, that at that age it's very hard to hide, unless you are a psychopath or a sociopath, and then you can hide it. But overall, I think at that age you know who you are, and you're not afraid to show it. So she met some characters, or weirdos as she called them. But one of those weirdos was Travis. I mean, they were never in a relationship. They went in one date, but they chatted over the website for some time. So it wasn't like they had some kind of a dating relationship, but they did get back and forth until she actually met him and realized that this guy was no good. Over one of those talks with her friend, Deborah mentions that she met this new guy who she's been talking for a while, and his name is Lester Winningham. Deborah explains that he's finishing school to become a child psychologist. He was doing grad school in Wichita Falls. This, for her, it was like a match made in heaven. She's a child psychologist. He's going to become a child psychologist, and she's a marriage counselor. So they met the next day for drinks. He has that very charismatic attitude. He was a gentleman. He was strong, smart, interesting guy. He could keep up a conversation, a smart conversation, something that would make sense. He wasn't nervous. And needless to say, this made Deborah very comfortable, and they started dating immediately. And as the days went by, it got more and more serious. He seems to be the one for Deborah, and honestly, most of her friends and co-workers agreed that really this was a match made in heaven. At this point, Deborah starts to get call from Travis, the creepy guy, the guy with no manners. And not only get calls, but she was kind of being stalked by this guy online. He would send her messages and she wouldn't reply. He would send messages again and more messages, and it got kind of creepy. And I think that at that point she was being comforted by the idea of having somebody in her life. I don't know what's up with me today and words in my brain, but since she was feeling a little bit more supported by this guy and comforted by him, she would go and talk to Lester and say, this guy Travis is sending me messages and whatever, but I just, don't worry about it. I'm not going to answer. And it was kind of building a bond, and she was feeling protected by this guy. So I don't know, it kind of, that I feel like it helped them get closer in this relationship and kind of trust each other a little bit more between Deborah and Lester. Now, she started to get a little bit scared, and she shared with Lester that there were a few other things that were going on. One of the things that happened during that time is that one of our patients told her that he had bad feelings for her. According to an expert, it's called transference, and it's very common in any kind of therapy. But they started to bother her. There were a lot of things piling up, and also this new relationship that she was developing with Lester kind of grew stronger despite everything that was going on, and they decided to move in together. And I think it was to her house, don't quote me on that, but I think it was to her house because they didn't move or anything like that. I couldn't find anything like that. And remember that he was in Wichita Falls, so I'm pretty sure that they moved in. I mean, he moved in with her. Not only that, but at that point, Deborah invited Lester. See, I don't know what's up with my words. But he invited him to become a partner or at least have his own office in her practice. Now she had a partner, she had other people, but they were happy that she found somebody and that she was doing something this nice for that guy that she barely knows. But nobody saw any kind of red flags or anything like that. So they decided to take a break, from work and from all these little incidents that were piling on her. And they go for the holidays. They go to Deborah's sister's house in Seattle. She introduces Lester to the sister, and she was happy for her. Over that same trip, Lester decides to propose to Deborah while they were still at the sister's house, and she agreed. He gave her a beautiful ring, and she was excited. She just couldn't believe that, this is happening. Finally she's finding love. Later on, she shows the ring to the sister, and the sister is so happy for her. But she says, hey, I like this guy, but have you thought about a prenup? And according to the sister, you could see in her face that she hadn't thought about it. But now it's like the sister put that in her head. And it would only make sense because if you really think about it, they met over the summer. They moved in together. They now share, the workplace. Now in December, that same year, he proposes. So she's marrying this guy that honestly she didn't even know that much. And she is the one in this partnership that has the most to lose. You see, she had her own practice and she was very successful, but she also had money that she got from her divorce and that she didn't need because she was doing very well in her practice. So she saved that money for her two stepsons. Now, these kids, or I'm assuming that they are older kids now, maybe even adults or teenagers, they weren't her sons, they were her ex's sons that he had with another woman. But she loved those kids so much that she wanted to give them that money that she got from the divorce. And it made sense. She wanted to keep that money intact. So she didn't want to share it with anybody. That was for the kids when she was no longer here. So they go back home. Everything is great. Everything is very exciting. And they're ready to set a date. The relationship is blooming. Things are going great. And so in the same conversation when they are trying to set up a date, she feels comfortable enough to ask him what he thinks about a prenup. And she only said, "What do you think about a prenup?" And he was silent for a minute or for a few seconds and then asked, "Why?" She tried to explain, but he started yelling, breaking things in the house, and that was the end of the conversation. He got crazy over it. So Deborah was scared. This man isn't the one that she knew. Of course, they didn't know each other for that long, so she probably had no idea, and he's been this way forever. She gave him the ring and asked him, you need to move out of the house. Now, if you think that breaking up with a guy it's a hard thing to do, or with a girl, try to work with them. I mean, they shared the same building, they had their own offices. This guy, Lester, developed a bad temper, and they were always arguing while they were at work. And he treated her so badly and in front of everyone that nobody could understand how this guy could change so much. So after a while, Deborah went back to the website, to the dating website, of course, and weird things started to happen again. But now it was late at night, so she would stay in the office to do paperwork. She usually would get off at 7 p.m., but now she was staying until 11 p.m., maybe even later. And she knows that she'd turn off the light because it was dark, so she made sure to turn off the light. And when she come back the next day, she would find the light on. Or sometimes on her way to the parking lot, she could see that somebody turned on the light, even when she knew that she turned off the light from her office. So she goes and tells her friend, and partner, that she thinks that Lester is going after hours and sleeping in her office. So they decide to check on him, go by the office late at night and try to see if they could see the light being on or off. And they see the light on quite a few times. Now, one of the last things that we know happened to Deborah, it was with her dog. And this is one of the things that really threw her off. She loved her pets. She referred to them as her kids, which I can totally relate. My dogs are my babies. And so one night, her dog Charlie, she let him out during the afternoon. He was outside in the yard. It was a fenced yard. When she came out, she found that somebody opened the gate that would lead to the road in her backyard or the side yard. I'm not sure what it was. She went looking for him to find him dead. Somebody killed him. And you could see that he was either stabbed or something happened, because you could tell that this was not an accident. So this was devastating for her. She almost couldn't deal with it. But then, to make things worse, on Monday, she doesn't go to the office and she has appointments all day. She never missed a day of work. And even if she was sick or something, she would call to make sure that they cancel the appointment before the clients get there. I mean, everyone knew that something really bad happened to her, because that wasn't like her. Now, when they start to think about when was the last time that they saw her, they realize that it was Monday now, and the last time that they saw her was Thursday. So they called the police and reported her as missing after trying to call her many, many times with no answer, of course. So the Texas Rangers visit her home. They do this as a wellness check. And what they found inside was something that they were not really expecting. They knew that something happened inside the house, and this is a few of the things that they found. Her glasses that she would use all the time and that she kept around her neck. They had blood stains, and there were some blood stains in the floor. The purse and her keys were on the table. The walls had blood smears all over in different places. And when they tried to go upstairs, they found bleach on the stairs. She had carpet, so it almost was like somebody tried to clean up the scene and made a bigger mess. They also found a bullet spent in her computer with the dating site open in her profile. The police at this point knew that something bad happened to her. and went back to the co-workers and the partners and everyone that knew her and had contact with her, and everyone was helpful and cooperated but Lester. He implied that she was bragging about a new dating website that she got over 400 hits. Now, one of the friends and co-workers and maybe even partner, I'm not sure who exactly she was, she told the police that Deborah was going to have a date that Friday. So she saw her on Thursday and she mentioned that she had a date the next day, and that she was not sure if she made it to meet this guy and maybe something happened with this guy, or if she actually didn't show up since then. Maybe something happened to her before then. So they go on the website, they find the guy, they question him, and they clear him pretty quickly after checking his alibi. He also told them that they never met, that they chatted online, but that they had a date that Friday and she canceled the date on Thursday night. Now, another, and I think this was Amy, but I am not 100% sure. One of the partners there and friend of, I'm pretty sure it was Amy, and friend of Deborah. She started to think about an incident that happened recently, and she talked to the police about it. It was about 10:30 p.m. A few weeks ago when she woke up, and her husband too, with the knock on the door. It was frantic, and they got scared, but when they got to the door, they realized that it was Deborah. And she said that she got Lester investigated, and that she realized that he was broke, that he had collections everywhere, bankruptcy. She had all the paperwork. And now she understands how he was using her to get to her money. Now, Amy and her husband tell her, let's go to the police, just make a report for safety. But she doesn't think it's going to make a difference. What is she going to say? I'm sorry, I wasn't smart about getting engaged to a guy that I had no idea who he was. She made a good argument. So, and she also explained that she changed the locks in her house as a safety precaution. So I think she was feeling more like, oh, I'm so dumb, Not that she was, but I'm feeling like, I think that she was feeling that way. Even though this was a therapist's office, these people do this for a living. Everyone said that they didn't see this coming, that they didn't see the signs or the signals or anything, that, this guy was basically a psychopath, or he pretended to be somebody who he wasn't, or maybe a good liar. Now, this is the sad part. 3 days before Deborah was reported missing, remember, she was reported missing on Monday, but 3 days before, so this was Friday, there was a guy that was going to work. He's a mechanic, and he was going to go to work every morning. And he found a body burned in the lot where he worked. He reported it to the police, and the police knew that it was a woman. But according to them, this was declared as a Jane Doe immediately because they couldn't recognize her. Now that's interesting because this was a county away, I think. So I don't know how they didn't put two and two together here. See, remember when we talk about how there's a lot of people as Jane Doe, that the police don't have some kind of a system that will connect people that is missing to this Jane Does, and how maybe there's a lot of Jane Does of people that have been missing, and we are continue to report on them hoping that they're alive. But maybe, they are somewhere with a Jane Doe or a John Doe. And it's just, okay. So one of Deborah's co-workers heard about this, about this lady that was found on Friday that was burned. So even though she didn't want to think that that was Deborah, she decided to call the police. The police, oh goodness gracious, it's been a week. The police, and ask. I do that. I kind of combine words. And especially when it's kind of getting to the developing part of the story. And she called the police and asked her, is it possible that Jane Doe is Deborah? And when they checked, they found Deborah's jewelry in the body. They could tell that that was something that Deborah had and owned, so they compared dental records, and in fact it was Deborah's body. Now this guy Lester, he's being a creep and goes by the lunchroom where he finds a co-worker that actually started the whole thing. The lady that learned about the Jane Doe and called the police and kind of helped this whole thing and matched Jane Doe with Deborah. And then he goes by and said, how did you know that Jane Doe was Deborah? And then he said, you're a smart one. She felt like this was extremely weird and creepy, so she immediately calls the police to report this unusual behavior on Lester. But by the time she calls, the police tells her that they can't give her more information, but that they're looking into the guy. At this point, they already had a search warrant, and they go into his place. I don't know if it was an apartment or a house, honestly. But later on, we learned that he rented this place by the office. So it could have been him who was kind of creeping on Deborah. Now, when they are searching his place, he's not there, but he shows up and he's finally arrested and they booked him immediately. Now, you're probably wondering why. What did the police had on this guy? Well, he was such a smart guy that he decided to withdraw $20,000, and he was getting his passport. Is it expedited? Trying to get your passport really, really fast, where you have to pay more and the process is different. So the police realized that, this guy, he's a genius. He's just planning to leave, and they knew it. So they finally search his car and they find blood to match with Deborah's. He never confesses to anything. But the police, they knew that he wanted to marry her for the money. She broke it off after the argument, but he knew that she was still looking for love. So he probably got mad and decided to kill her. What was he going to win money-wise? Nothing, really. But he was so mad at her. He was so possessive and so not okay with the idea of her moving on that they believed that he got in the house one night before she got home, that probably Thursday night, and that he had a little interaction with Deborah. She probably begged for him if she saw the gun. This is all assuming by the police that this is what happened because of how they found the body and the autopsy. Because we know that she was burned, but we do also know that she was shot 3 times in the back. So she probably had a little interaction with him and then tried to run away from him. He shot her once. She kept running and struggling to move, so he shot her twice. She was still alive, and she tried to continue to move, so he shot her a 3rd time. Now, they believe that he, with that 3rd shot, She couldn't move, but they believed that she was still alive. Which, I mean, take us to one of the horrible parts of the story. But he still took her to the garage. He put her inside a tarp and tied her with rope to take her to the place where he burned the body. They're not sure if she was alive and for how long, but they're not sure if she was still alive by the time that that this guy was burning her body. On October 12th, 2007, he was found guilty of first-degree homicide and sentenced to life in prison. He only served 10 years, though, because he died in 2017. According to all the evidence and testimony and the investigation itself, this guy was jealous of her being successful. I mean, he wanted her life. It had nothing to do with love or liking or attraction. It wasn't about a partnership. It was about the fact that he wanted to have her life. So even though, I mean, the guy got his sentence and we know that he did it and there was enough physical evidence to convict him. I mean, I think this kind of teaches us a lesson that sometimes we get blinded by what we want to do with our lives. I really want a family, so I better find a partner. I really want kids, so I better, find somebody who I can have kids with or adopt kids with, and sometimes we don't understand that it takes time to build a relationship. It takes work. It takes commitment. People that stay married for 40 years, and even more than that, they will tell you, and I love to listen to those stories, and my goodness, that all it takes to get to be married for that long is understanding that you just have to compromise. And of course you have to determine what things you're willing to compromise and what things you're not willing to compromise. If the person that you are married with is abusive or is a cheater, or if it has an addiction, of course those are things that are really hard to compromise on. But there's people that still, they still manage. They work around it. But we're all different. And we all can compromise in different things. But, it's good to have that goal of have a relationship and somebody to share your life with, and all it's good. But I think that cutting corners in the getting to know you department, it's kind of scary, because sometimes you get married. I've been married to my husband since we've been together forever, but we got married when I was 18. He was 22. And believe me, I was living with the guy for 3 years before we got married. And I knew a lot about him. But once we got married, I kept learning and learning more and more about him, and some things I liked and some other things that I didn't like. And it takes a lot of communication, it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of work on each person. Work on yourself to be better for a relationship. So I feel like every time we cut corners and we try to get to the goal of finding a partner, finding somebody to share our lives with, but not taking the time to truly understand the kind of person that you're marrying or going out with, it can lead you to scary things, not because you're gonna find a killer, like in this case, which, I mean, you might, but not likely. It is not the majority, but you're gonna encounter some very interesting people along the way. And if you are giving your 100% and you're trying to make things work, and if you're trying to just getting to know that person before you open up your, in this case, her practice, her home. And it wasn't her fault. It wasn't. She saw the signs. She ended the relationship. But I hope that we can all take something from this case. That was not her fault, but only Lester's fault. For deciding that because he was angry, he was going to act on it. He could have moved on. He could have found another person. He could have continued to work in this very successful office. And he chose to act on his feelings. So yeah, it wasn't her fault. But I hope that we can all get something from this horrible nightmare of online dating that she had. There were a lot of other weirdos that she ran into, like Travis. Guys that were a little bit of a stalkers, and but those were harmless. And the guy that she thought it was going to be, a smart, strong, powerful man, he ended up being the complete opposite, because that's what happens. You get blinded by, the good things, the gestures, the nice parts of the relationship and the dating that you have. But a commitment should take a lot more time to actually decide. Some people get lucky. They don't know each other, and yet they get married, and they're happily, they live happily ever after. But I think as to, to the rate that we're going in this world, that I think things are changing. Things are definitely not like when I got married or when I was dating my husband. Definitely changed. So I guess we have to pay attention to the signs and listen to our inner voice and that inner person that we have inside of us that will tell us the difference between good and wrong. When you have that gut feeling that something is not right here, you don't have to know exactly what it is. You just have to listen to it. I hope that you never encounter a situation like this. I hope that you never encounter anything like any of the cases that I share here with you guys. But I hope this keep us in our toes. And keeping the trust in who deserves our trust, and not so much in who we want to trust. I'll see you back here on Friday with a whisper video. And then remember, if you want to follow my podcast, to look up the Mystery Theory. I'm also on Spotify for those of you who likes to use Spotify. So I have quite a few cases that I'm really excited to share with you from now on Sundays. So thanks for watching. Bye guys.